All right, folks, we are live. Let me tone down the music a little bit and then we'll do a quick audio check. All right, and Ed, let's do a quick sound check on you, please.
All right, Sam, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I hear you okay. I see our audio meter looking good, so I think we are good to go. All right, and I will keep a hint of the music playing in the background, just for fun. All right, so let me turn off a few things here on my end. Okay, cool. All right, folks, so a very good morning. If you are anywhere in the Americas, good afternoon, good evening if you're joining us from anywhere else in the world. Oh, hey, I see our good friend Till Learn Code in the chat room. Hey, good morning. Ed, do you know who that is?
That would be Chad Green,
yes,
right?
Yes, hello, Chad. Let me see if I can do a dance for you. Oh, no, maybe not. Yeah, okay. All right, there we go. So, yeah, we're holding up good, Chad, just a Wednesday morning. And actually, since we are bright and early this morning and I get to talk to Ed, so let's do some introductions first. My name is Sam Basu. I am a developer advocate here at Progress Software out of Pennsylvania. And with me, I have my good friend, Ed. So introduce yourself, please.
So I am also a developer advocate here at Progress, focused on web development and dabbling in many things.
Yep, for sure. So Ed is my good friend, and we travel quite a bit together. So he is somebody who just cannot skip breakfast. Like my breakfast is most days like coffee and whatever else I can just grab. But I think today I can actually one up on you. So what did you have for breakfast?
You're definitely going to one up me. I woke up late and had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
It's not bad.
I toasted it though,
yeah.
So it's gourmet.
So today we made just a quick avocado toast. We had some uncured pepperoni and some onions and some fresh like nuts and stuff. So it was crunchy and it was good to have with coffee. So a little better than my usual like cashews.
What I'm missing is the usual breakfast at a place which will go unnamed on our stream. That is normally the place we visit before Build every year. Yes. If you've been to Seattle, you probably know the biscuit place I'm talking about, but I won't shout out the name because this is a family show.
Yes, of course. Hey, I see Little One-on-One. Good to see you. Good to see you. Haven't seen you in maybe a few weeks, so good to have you join us again. All right, so we are all at home while a big thing is going on. It's like a 48-hour stream of Microsoft Build, which is the big developer conference from Microsoft. Lots of effort that went into this. So there are a lot of things we saw yesterday that were super exciting. So we just kind of want to break this down as to what all of this means for developers, like especially .NET developers in the house. Lots of big announcements. You're actually looking at Ed and me, but you're looking at Ed's screen. So we can talk about some of the major things that came out. But first, before we go into any of the details, like Ed, how did you feel about the whole like setup and how they streamed?
First of all, I'd like to know where that studio is that Seth is recording out of. That was slick. I like the setup there.
Yeah, I'm guessing somewhere in Redmond. Not the regular like Channel 9 studios that Ed and me have been there many a times, but this was a nice slick set. And I think they had essentially just the hosts for each region in those studios. So I think like UK had 2 hosts and then somebody in Australia was hosting. So I think they only had the main hosts in that studio that they built, but everything else was online. Oh, hey, Little One-on-One says, made pizza bites with Ritz crackers. Nice. So that, I'm guessing, is dinner for you? Because I think you're from Europe.
It's Wednesday, Sam. This is Wednesday. Not... Hump day is not my day to be, like, uber productive in the morning.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not. So, yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk about a few things that I liked, things that kind of caught my attention. So I had a few links pulled up. Let me see if I can bring them out here. So first up, Satya Nadella started the show with a quick intro and a shout out to some of the things that developers are doing, and it's a nice chat on yeah, don't cross streams. It was a nice kind of not innovative. I want to say inspiring chat on what we can do. But then there was a little Easter egg, which I'm going to post here in the chat room. Folks were wondering. He had a wall, a showcase full of interesting and carefully crafted things. A lot of folks noticed like a cricket ball right away. The Windows Ninja. There was a GitHub thing. But then there was like a few letters. Did you see that, Ed?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so somebody actually broke this down, and I want to give a shout out to the guy who did. So it was actually this guy. So hang on. So people started wondering, like, what is it? What is it that is that sign? Because it seemed like very custom made. So that is actually a base 64 encoded thing that stands for devs, which was like a cool little shout out. And folks compared like how different things are, where Steve Ballmer used to go developers, 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 and this is much more subtle, but you're still recognizing folks. So that was nice. And then there was one other thing. I may not be able to pull up a link to this. Ed, did you see the thing with Scott Guthrie?
No, I didn't watch the Scott Guthrie segment. I was busy building an app for a webinar that's coming up soon.
Okay. Well, I watched some of it, and then somebody did a screen capture, which was hilarious. So essentially, I mean, all of us are used to seeing Scott Guthrie in his like red polos, right? Which is exactly what he had on. But then at the end of his section, the camera just kind of cut away, pulled away from just zooming in on him, and he was in his PJs with like a dinosaur slipper on. I thought that was just hilarious. That's just so much fun. So,
I mean, everybody's doing it these days.
Yeah.
I heard somebody refer to it as mullet dressing because you know the mullet haircut, like it's party in the front, yeah, or business in the front, party in the back.
Yeah, I have to leave my hat. Mine's like too much of a wild party. So that was fun. Scott Hanselman did a wonderful keynote, which he normally does, like Hanselman and Friends type things, where he brings on folks, and he had some really cool stuff that he showcased, like tiny Easter eggs here and there. A few things that I did not know. So if you are on a Teams call, and if you're on the Teams mobile app, you could actually share your screen from your mobile device, which I thought was cool. There were terminals, yeah, little one-on-ones, all the slippers. That was really funny. Then he had a whole lighting system going, which our good friend like Isaac Levinson, I think, helped him set up the whole thing. So based on the mood, based on your availability on Teams, you could set the lighting in your room, and you could change things up. So that was pretty fun. Yeah, and there were lots of jokes on pans, because like Seth Juarez is somebody we know fairly well, and Seth started off with a whole bunch of dad jokes. So yeah, it was fun. I thought it was as interactive as they could make it. Again, it's you just cannot replace an in-person event, but I mean this is as close as we could get actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the production value is really good. They're really, I mean, doing the best they can with the situation. So yeah, it's nice to see. Exactly,
and I mean, you and me have been to like Channel 9 folks. Those are some really smart folks who know their AV stuff. So that was good to see. Okay, so it's actually still going on. So I think there are some sessions that are being repeated, and there are more things for Office Dev that's today. But for us, most of the .NET announcements are actually, I think, already out. So let's start diving in, because there's a fair bit to unpack and kind of talk through. So you're actually looking at Ed's screen, like I said, and I see, Ed, you have the Maui thing pulled up. So shall we talk about that?
Let's talk about Maui. So it's funny, this blog post dropped probably about an hour before his session went live. So I saw people tweeting it. And I was like, whoa, cat's out of the bag.
Yeah, I mean, once it's out, you can tweet. And let me drop a few links here in the chat room. So that's the blog post for .NET 5 Preview 4 that's out. And I got the URL for the Maui thing that Ed has pulled up as well. So we can talk about that. So essentially, lots of things happening. What was interesting to me, now Ed and me, again, we being Progress Software partners of Microsoft, and both of us are MVP, so we knew some of this coming out, but it's still exciting to see how it's evolving. And some of the timelines have actually changed a little bit because, again, we are living through a global pandemic. Everybody wants continuity of business, and we want to do the right things for all customers, and same with Microsoft. So .NET 5 is the evolution of .NET as a framework, as a platform, and it's a unification story from what all of the blog posts suggest. So there are a few different base class libraries, BCLs, right now. So there is .NET Framework, which is what we have been used to. There's .NET Core. There's Mono. There's Unity. So they're trying to bring this all together into .NET 5, right? Ed, is that a fair statement?
Yeah. So at this point, we could say .NET Core is dead.
Well, I wouldn't call it dead. It's just
I know, I'm
people
teasing.
exactly. Everything is dead. But this is a gigantic effort, actually, to be able to bring the best of .NET Core, combine it with Mono, and yet be able to support all the frameworks right now that are supported. I think that's a big effort on their side. So I don't know if you noticed the timelines on some of the things, but .NET 5 Preview 4 is out right now. Hey, Ivana, Ivana is our colleague.
Eva!
Yay, good to see you. Good to see you. You shouldn't say dead. Here's a gasping thing that
I know,
you did
right?
say dead.
I had to throw it out there because in the blog post, I'm trying to find it again. There's a strike through right here. We've been removing core from various aspects of the product, and we'll get into this in a minute as well, Sam, with the Maui announcement.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I heard they're removing the Xamarin name from that as well. We'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah,
I'm just saying, like, things are dropping off.
Well, they're evolving.
Doesn't mean they're dying.
Yeah,
I was joking by saying it's dead.
They're evolving. Yeah.
It always gets people listening. I was just trying to wake folks up.
It's funny. I know.
If I say something's dead enough, people wake up and listen.
Exactly, and then they take notice. It's funny that oh hey, Write and Code is here. That's our good friend. Hang on, I got a little dance for you. Good to see you. I didn't know you were on Twitch, so that's awesome to see you. Yeah, we're doing well, just hanging on and doing the best we can in our quarantine periods. Good to see you. So.
Want to see people's ears perk up, Sam, and start listening? I have an unfounded rumor that JavaScript is dead.
Yeah, it's funny.
Totally.
I have a friend who maintains like a super popular open source framework, and he's like, anytime I'm gone for like 2 weeks, people assume things are dead. Seriously, it's fine. Yeah. Okay, so .NET 5 Preview 4 is out, and I think by the time .NET Conf is going to hit, which is November, mid-November, I think the plan is they are going to try to push out the RTM bits for .NET 5. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're looking at the .NET Conf in, was it September?
No, November. Yeah, mid-November.
November.
Hey, Dan Siegel. I was actually referring to you guys, actually. I know. So Dan Siegel is a fellow streamer, folks. Him and Brian Lagunas maintain Prism, and they will tell you stories about how people just assume things are dead because you've been on vacation. Yeah, it's funny. So .NET 5 hits mid-November, and it is actually a big endeavor when it comes to some of the things that they have to pull up under the covers, which we'll get to some of the things like for WinForms and where some of the challenges are. But let's talk about, okay, anything else with .NET 5 that you wanted to mention, Ed?
We can go over these highlights real quick.
Yeah.
There's some really interesting stuff in here. If I get my
Yeah.
Zoom to...
No, it's working.
There we go.
C#
All
9,
right, so
yeah.
C# 9.
I know Mads and Dave Campbell did a session evening time yesterday.
F# 5
Yes.
for all three you F# developers out there.
Oh, no, that's just mean.
My sarcasm's thick today. Like I said, it's Wednesday. I'd love to learn .NET 5 or F#. I just can't find the time or a good excuse. But the people that use it love it, and I love functional programming. It seems like a great fit. But I just keep falling back on good old C#.
Yeah, so like writing code in the chat room, like him and I are Xamarin devs, and we have dabbled. I have tried learning. It's just like you. I mean, I'm just so comfortable. I'm like an old man. It doesn't want to come out of his PJs. Like, it's working. Why change? Yeah.
It's proved performance. I mean, what's there not to like about that?
Yeah.
.NET Core is extremely fast already. There's a lot of strong performance gains on the server side of that as well. We've seen through the road of all the .NET Core releases, the web API performance has just gone completely through the roof. So it looks like they're still banging out performance improvements everywhere, including HTTP, like I said, with web API stuff. But they also got things like regular expressions, because everybody loves those, and lots of other little tweaks in here as well. So
yeah. See our good friend Jesse Goodwagner is here. Yeah, and all of the things in C# that you mentioned, I feel like it's very mature at this point, but then, I mean, there are always things to be done, and I mean, they're borrowing things from functional in some ways. So yeah, I mean, Joe is saying F# is a different mindset. Yes, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, maybe we need to get somebody to teach us F# on a stream sometime.
Yeah. It's also, if you think about it, it's also a relief to see that the folks that are in charge of your Azure bill are doing everything they can to make the frameworks that you use more efficient.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of responsibility there. And it looks like they've done a lot of work to make sure that, when you see these performance improvements come out, they're not only saving speed, but they're doing less work. So potentially that could affect how much you're paying if you're hosting these things in the cloud somewhere.
Yeah, I hear you. Dan Siegel is saying regex. He wishes regex was built into C#. Yeah.
Is it? I thought regex was built in.
Some
it's
of it.
Just a namespace you bring in. It's part of the framework. It's not a third-party thing.
No,
unlike like JavaScript and dates or something.
Don't get into dates. No, but I think I kind of see what Dan is saying. I think like some things you could, but I mean it may be just like a different namespace you bring in. But there are certain features and like shorthand things that may not be quite baked in. So
Gotcha.
Yeah, lots of improvements, performance tuning in .NET 5. But again, under the covers, a lot of things are changing. Hey,
here's a scary one. All the JSON APIs have moved. Your cheese has moved. I'm triple highlighting this one. Everything went from Newtonsoft.json to system.text.json. That was a rocky road right there. It's a lot better now, though.
We don't see our highlights, by the way, on screen.
You don't see my highlight? Yes, you do. You don't, maybe. It's showing on the stream. I'm seeing it on the monitor, so...
Okay.
I don't know why you're not able to see it, Sam.
Okay. Yeah, I see it on Skype.
So yeah, that was a whole. So if you haven't switched from like .NET Framework to .NET Core yet, that's a big learning experience there. So Newtonsoft.json replaced by system.text.json. So there's a potential that you might try to port some code over and it might fail. Those are two completely different serialization frameworks, and they've done a lot of work to make them very close in feature parity, but for efficiency reasons, I believe there are some things that just don't work in system.text.json, and you may see some things not work there. So that's something to keep in mind when you move forward with this. But .NET Core 3.2, I think, is the first time we'll see that everywhere. But it looks like they're keeping that the going trend throughout the .NET 5 framework.
Yeah. All right, so that's with .NET 5. Shall we switch over to Maui?
Sure.
Because this is
so besides a place in Hawaii, Hawaiian Islands.
it's funny. Like when they first showed this off, we had an MVP summit where we saw previews of this. Like that's immediately where your mind goes, and the movie, and then the Maui character. So you'll see a lot of like GIFs and memes, I'm sure. So this is multi-platform app UI, and this is actually a welcome change. I think for better or worse, Xamarin Forms is evolving into this new thing, and then what you call like Xamarin for iOS and Xamarin for Android, those are going to be baked into the .NET ecosystem entirely. So, and as will be Maui. So yeah, a little one-on-one in the chat room is saying C# and Xamarin are pretty much the same. Yeah, I think the confidence part of it is going to be nice. For some reason, like if you still had, like if you're second guessing yourself about Xamarin and Xamarin Forms in particular, this should now just be part of .NET. So I think this is a welcome change, and what you're getting is a few things that are different. One is a truly single code base, and we are doing away with some of the platform-specific things, so the builds are a little easier. And then just the runtime, and I mean it's still running on Mono, but it's also pulling in some .NET Core things that it needs. So it is targeting mobile and desktop. So that is Windows, Mac OS, iOS, and Android, which I think is going to be a good story for cross-platform with .NET.
Yeah, so I need to rewatch the session again, and I pulled it up here. It is live, which is something that I thought was interesting. They're actually, I don't know if they're actually doing it live 3 times, or if they just repeated that headline 3 times. But it looks like they may potentially be doing this live again, which I wouldn't doubt if they did. But I might need to watch it again.
I don't know.
Somewhere in that session, I could have swore there was some mention of dropping the term Xamarin from this.
Yeah, there absolutely is. Yeah, it's just called Maui.
So that's a huge change, even though it's still technically Xamarin.
Yeah, it is.
That's a big brand that's been built for many years. So that shows the investment in this Maui approach, that they're willing to risk that that brand name and do away with it in favor of this, because I guess it's going to be confusing if a Xamarin app is a Maui app and a UWP app is a Maui app and a Blazor app is a Maui app. So they're trying to slim things down and give us one way to talk about it.
And again, like this is, I think, for better or worse, because again, folks in the chat room are chiming in. So Xamarin, again, for those of us who did it, we had maybe our pain points, but we liked it overall. But just it's like a fresh start, and everything is Maui. And yes, you're getting into some interesting things like how do you upgrade? Is every Maui app also a Xamarin app? It's just going to be Maui from this point forward, and there's going to be like migration things. Now, what's interesting is what Chad pointed out in the chat room. The timelines moved a little bit, again, because we are living through a pandemic. So initially the plan was that Maui is going to hit RTM with .NET 5. And I think that's moved a little bit. I mean, I think we're still going to get preview bits, but I think it's .NET 6 now, which is 2021. Because it follows, like the next LTS of .NET is .NET 6, and I think it's going to follow that cycle, that cadence of once a year thing. Yeah. So, no, go on.
I've got up on the screen a little preview of what they showed at the session as far as how apps are created in your project structure.
Yeah.
So we've got a single solution with a single project that has a platforms node.
Yep.
And that platforms node has all of our targets that we're building for.
Yes, but it's also nicely shaken up, which is what Dan Siegel is referring to. It's actually a very nice change to see all of your fonts, all of your images, all of your resources for each mobile app and each platform be in the generic project itself. And they're going to be smart in how they pull those out to do the builds. But anything that is like that you're doing it just for iOS can go into the iOS folder essentially. So the builds and the process is a little more streamlined. But the biggest thing to me with Maui, yes, it is paradise. As long as everybody is welcome to paradise, which again, as technology goes, not everybody is welcome all the time. And again, like enterprises will be slow to adopt, but I mean, this is where we are headed. With Maui, which is, if you scroll down a little bit, Ed, I think they kind of spell it out. So there's flexibility for developers as to how you write the UI stack, and this I think is a big change because they're trying to open up the funnel, try to get more folks into it. So XAML Forms, again, for better or worse, used to be a very specific version of XAML, which people complained. Again, those of us who were just doing XAML Forms, we didn't mind because it was a very mobile-specific version of XAML because there was always WPF and UWP and UNO and all of those things. But now it is still XAML Forms XAML. They're trying to get to a similar spot where it's not too different in terms of namespaces. Another thing that Dan Siegel pointed out is they are dropping all of the namespaces, so it's not Xamarin anywhere. It is just Maui. So you will still have all of the XAML things that you do. You can still do that, and it supports Mvvm. And again, Dan maintains Prism, and there are other Mvvm frameworks. So all of the things that are comfortable for XAML developers, they will all be there. But there are two more ways of defining the UI stack now. One is kind of an MVU pattern, which is kind of for C#. I'm not the biggest fan of that, but I can see why it works, where you're essentially describing the visual tree in C# itself, right? And I think a lot of like web frameworks work like that. So if you scroll down, that's just the XAML part that you're looking at, and then the MVU is for the C# like imperative declarations. And then with something that excites you is Blazor. So there are like three ways right now to define the UI stack for Maui. And
so the Mvvm is like your traditional XAML app.
Yeah.
And that approach, I think most .NET developers would be familiar with. And I think they want to have people feel like they're more at home when they come from other ecosystems. They're comparing this to Elm, which is interesting, but I feel like it's very React-like.
It is.
So this is very React-like to me. And if I was a React developer, I could look at this and pretty much understand what's happening here. This is kind of like the render method in React, and we're just kind of piping with Lambda expressions that we want a new layout view to render, and it's going to have a button and a label, and it's very, very much like that React type of a syntax, like JSX. So that looks interesting to me, but they don't have an example of it here, but it is mentioned up here above that Blazor is also another framework model that they're using. So you can just describe your views and using the Razor syntax. And that is one of the easiest ways that I've found to do development.
We're being asked to hydrate, Ed. And I'm going to ask you to pull up one thing, and then I'm going to read two things that I think are important. You don't have a drink?
I did a bad thing. I don't even have a drink.
All right.
I drank my coffee. Is that considered hydration? My coffee's gone.
No, it's the reverse of hydration.
Is it? Double shot espresso down the hatch.
So Chad Green, Taylor Learn Code, pointed out on something that I maybe misspoke. So the .NET 6, which is where Maui is supposed to come out, you're going to see the previews of that shortly after .NET 5. So probably by end of this year, or if not early next year. So it shouldn't be like a long wait until 2021 to get your bits. It should be something that you will see come out fairly quickly. And yeah, Dan Siegel pointed out something interesting. So for the mobile developers in the house, we do things that are very platform specific. So iOS has an info plist. There's a manifest file for Android. Those are very platform specific things, and I think those still stay in the platform specific projects, because I would be very
Yep.
surprised if they were doing some funky things to pull out just those things for the builds. But yes, everything else should be a single project and a single code base, and that's nice.
Yeah, you still need those. You still need a mechanic to pick up the nuanced things that are different between the platforms, and sometimes imagery is different. You know, iconography and theming is different from Android to iOS, so you can't quite have the same visual assets. You know, you don't want an Android-looking button on a iOS, you know, application.
No,
So
you won't ever get that, because I mean it is still Xamarin Forms. You're rendering native UI. So when you
yeah,
say
maybe button was a bad example, but you know, if you had a custom UI component, you wouldn't want that custom UI component to look different on, you know, different than the surrounding OS. So you'd want to have a version that's rendered for the theme of iOS and the theme of Android. So there's always, you know, a place to have those little what do you call that? We did this with native script as well. So you need these targeted ways of handling it. You could see it right here.
Yeah.
So you have your platforms, and then you might have a piece of code that runs. APIs can differ too from one device to another. So there might be some small little shims or something that you need to put in different platforms to make those, you know, those calls adapt.
Yeah, and there are
platforms.
more things going on here under the covers. We also, in Xamarin Forms land, we also have the concept of renderers, which is like an abstraction that renders the native UI, that turns around, looks at your UI markup, and renders the native components on each platform. And you can customize those renderers. And Dan is saying the iOS button essentially is just like blue text. So I think we would all maybe like some more flat material design elsewhere. Yes, so you're all right, and I think this is good. This is going to be good. Lots of things to iron out, but I think it's a step in the right direction. Now, the big news, obviously, that I'm sure Ed is over the moon on this one, is WebAssembly, right? Blazor WebAssembly, it's ready. It's ready. It's ready to go. And everything is in the browser.
Replying to Dan, who's complaining he doesn't like the way that iOS buttons look. I just told him he needs the right dongle. If you have the right dongle, you can do anything with the buttons.
All right.
Isn't that how iOS works? Dongles?
No, it's how Mac works. Okay, you have a minute to shout as much as you want about WebAssembly and Blazor.
It's here. It's finally happening. No, it's been happening for a while, but they've held back on making it official until it was ready for prime time. And I think some of the big things that hit to make this the official release, and what the team was waiting for, was the fact that you can now debug successfully and inspect values, and it's seamless. It doesn't crash.
Did you see the demo that Scott Hunter did on the debugging? I think that was new.
So that shipped one release before RTM. Okay. So it was like preview 5, I think.
Yeah.
Which is pretty close to down to the wire for this final release.
Major feature, yeah.
Yeah, so it was absolutely a major feature, and I was just using it yesterday to try to troubleshoot something in my app. But yeah, you can set a breakpoint in your C# code that's running in a browser running on the mono WASM runtime, and you're in a JavaScript environment, but you can manage to set a breakpoint, and it pops up in Visual Studio just like any other breakpoint.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet.
And you can inspect values and all that stuff and troubleshoot your app. So it was one of those must-have features.
Absolutely. But we got a fight on our hands because Dan Siegel, like me, is a native dev, and he's saying WebAssembly is slow.
WebAssembly itself is not slow. So it's not so much a WebAssembly thing. When Blazor uses WebAssembly, it is running the .NET runtime, and your code is running as a .NET library. And there is some, it's running in an interpreted mode. So it is a little bit slower. It's a bit slower, actually, if you're running Blazor server side. Blazor WASM, it's dependent on the client's machine or mobile device or whatever it's running on. And then it's a little bit slower because of the fact that it's running kind of in this VM state. So it is a little bit slower. You have to be, it's one of those things where it goes back to being a good developer and not being sloppy. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just we have so much power on our desktops and laptops these days that you kind of get a little bit, you know, a little slacked in kind of the good habits that you should have in saving, being mindful of things that are going to cause performance issues or just use more memory. I talk a lot about this in some of my sessions that I do. If you're looking for the maximum value in an array, do you use a sort or do you use a reduce method like JavaScript's reduce or the aggregate function? One of those is much, much faster than the other. So things like that start becoming important again, running in Blazor WebAssembly. So that's just something to be mindful of. It's not to a magnitude that your apps just are going to be laggy or slow, but you have to be a good developer and watch out for those gotcha type things, so you're not overloading the system.
Yeah. No, you're right. And again, I mean, the whole WebAssembly thing makes for like super cool demos. Like it's like a wow factor of running everything in the client side. But I mean, it needs to be battle tested. It needs to be something that we can prove out to big enterprises, big apps being built, and we'll start seeing improvements all over the place, I think. And I mean, it's still early days for WebAssembly, but the promise is enormous. And speaking of Blazor, you mentioned this before. There is also the Blazor mobile bindings thing, which we have for Xamarin Forms, where you're essentially using the Blazor, like the Razor syntax and the Blazor component model, but you're rendering Xamarin Forms UI on the front end. So that's, I think, going to evolve into what Maui promises. Like the other way of rendering is through Blazor. So if you are investing into Blazor, you're going to be in a good place. Whether you run it server-side, client-side, or you want to do mobile, the same skill sets will take your app places.
Yeah. One of the other big things here is this last line says fully featured, is the title. It says great tooling with Visual Studio, Visual Studio for Mac, and Visual Studio Code.
Yep.
So I've been talking about Blazor for nearly 3 years now, and it's always been a Visual Studio story because there's been constant tooling tooling updates that are there because this is bleeding edge tech. And now that it's kind of settled and the breaking changes have ceased, they've rolled out tooling for Visual Studio for Mac.
Yeah, I think I've had that.
The Visual Studio Code experience.
Yeah, and for us, like for mobile devs, we have never had it on VS Code, but I think with Blazor and Maui, you're going to start seeing it on VS Code as well. Which, I mean, it's going to be interesting because, like, okay, little one-on-one, you're opening up a can of worms, saying UWP is dead or alive. We shall get to it in just a second. But like your IDE does a whole lot of things when it comes to mobile dev. Like it does the builds, it pulls up the emulators, all of that. Why are you pulling up Frozen?
This is for you, little one-on-one, in regards to UWP.
All right. You want to get into the mess? Let's talk about it. No, it's not a mess. It's fine.
You need to let it go.
Let it go.
Let it go.
Hey, like,
you can tell I have kids, right?
I mean, speaking of like ecosystem and letting things go, we from Progress Software standpoint, we had a Telerik release, and a lot of things tie in directly to build. For what it's worth, we are still maintaining UI for Silverlight, because there are folks using it, and we are pushing out a few updates every release into that. And Blazor, obviously, Ed, we have been kind of on the bleeding edge. We have how many components now that are Telerik UI for Blazor?
According to this fantastic press release that says that Telerik is first to market again in .NET components, we have 40 plus
Nice.
Blazor components. We also have support for .NET 5 already. And it was Cecil Phillips, I think. I tweeted this out, and he was like, "Man, you guys are on top of it."
Yeah, I mean, because we know we are partners. They share stuff. So yeah, for like WPF WinForms, we already have like .NET 5 preview support. The thing that we are really working on. So again, not to leave like the desktop side of the family alone. Desktop has also evolved. Like you can run WPF and WinForms on .NET Core like 3.1 onwards, and the story is going to be the same with .NET 5. What is different is like we are bringing back some of the old school, like you could say like drag and drop, but I mean it's really is very productive way for doing WinForms. We're bringing some of those designers back with Microsoft, so those are things that are cooking. Do I still have you? Check audio.
Yep, I'm still here.
Okay.
My microphone is extremely quiet because I have the new NVIDIA RTX processor.
Right. Here goes.
And it's doing noise suppression.
Just a humble brag.
I love this thing, man. So AI is really cool. I'm always a big nerd on AI stuff, and my graphics card has built-in AI noise suppression, which makes doing these streams so much better.
Nice.
So
now that's the PWA you have pulled up, right?
Yeah. So this is a Blazor progressive web app, and this is using our Telerik UI components. So you can see we've got charts and data grids, and these things can be like fully featured, sorting, filtering, all that stuff. Templates, you can see we're using some inline charts here in the grid templates. We need to update this. We have a brand new date range picker, which is much better than having two individual drop downs like this. But I mean, it's really nice to be able to build these PWA applications completely in C#.
Yeah. And
using Razor syntax.
I hear you. Yeah.
One-click install on this thing.
Yeah. So
I can just install my application, have it running as a desktop app now.
And on mobile as well. So that's nice.
Yeah. Does iOS support PWAs now, Sam? I'm not too up to date on this stuff.
Yes and no. Most of it is there. Some features are not quite as full.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they do allow you to install them now.
Yes.
I don't know if that's a new change or not. But,
no, it's been there. But okay. Yeah, I mean, you cannot expect the Chrome type support from Safari. Yeah. So again, I think WebAssembly and Blazor going all in on WebAssembly is a very good trend because it has implications for mobile. It has implications for desktop like Electron or the web view thing that they have been talking about. There are multiple ways of bringing this web shell into other application platforms. So I think that's exciting. Speaking of platforms that are dying or kicking alive, let's talk about WinUI. So this is for you, little one-on-one. And Dan Siegel, if you're in the chat room, I would love to get your views on this one as well. So they released WinUI Preview 1 yesterday. Well, I think maybe it was out like a couple of days back. But so just for reference, WinUI is essentially Windows UI. And there are like two parallel tracks that they were building on. WinUI 2 was an attempt to kind of try to separate WinUI app, yes. They're trying to separate Windows UI from Windows as a platform because that really slows them down in terms of Windows updates. But this is the XAML stack. This is everything UWP that you can think of. And WinUI 3 is trying to start off with UWP and then hopefully, or maybe not with MAUI, go cross-platform one day. But for Windows, like all Windows devices, this is the modern UI framework that you should be using, and it's got a lot of smart brains working on it. In fact, there are things about WinUI that MAUI is just going to run on. So when MAUI runs on Windows, it's actually going to use some of the WinUI UI components. So if you are a UWP dev or if you are a WPF dev this is the next thing that you should do. Has implications for Uno platform, has implications for everybody. I don't know if you saw this ad, but kind of right in line with us being bleeding edge, we actually did release a Telerik UI for WinUI suite yesterday. So that's about, I think, a dozen or so.
It's mentioned
controls
here in the article
Yes,
as well,
it is.
Sam.
Yeah, that's our good friend Alia Gavrish and the .NET team that gives us some love. But again, yeah, we are out there. We are rebuilding, we are repackaging, we are repurposing things when they make sense. But if you are building for Windows, you should be building on WinUI moving forward. Not to say UWP is going away anywhere, but just the APIs are evolving. Just the UI stack is getting separated from Windows. So
you can say dead in there if you want. Just kidding. I'm kidding again. It's not. Windows desktop development is not dead. WinForms is not dead. We have quite a few actually WinForms developers that use Telerik UI for WinForms.
Oh, it's a huge base.
I mean, it's huge. And, so there's still a lot of you out there.
Exactly, and even bigger is WPF, and that's not going away anywhere because like you can build modern console apps, inking apps, everything in WPF with a modern web browser. What's stopping you? You can run it on .NET Core 3, so it's future proof. Yeah, I mean WPF is here to stay. And Dan Siegel, I think, pretty much summed up our worldview in like 2 lines. Like, just combine everything, just build it all together, buy out Uno, which I'm sure the Uno guys would appreciate that shout out. But there are lots of overlaps here, as you can see, with what Maui is doing. So Uno has always been the thing to go to if you, by universal Windows platform, you meant little outside of the Windows. It's not universal if you don't include any other platform. So Uno took it, UWP XAML to iOS and Android, and they will still keep on doing it until WinUI says, yeah, we can now open up to multi-platform, which I don't know if they will right now. Progress also just released. Telerik also, yeah. I mean, we just had a release. We in fact have a release webinar tomorrow, a little one-on-one, where we'll talk about some of our releases. But again, a lot of it ties into some of the MS Build announcements. So interesting times, I think, for Windows devs. Nothing is dying as of now, but things are quickly evolving. We don't know what the future is going to hold, but WinUI is definitely the way forward in terms of Windows UI.
So Sam, I'm scanning for some information on the code spaces or the Visual Studio Online stuff that they showed, and I can't seem to find it. I was looking for. I know there's some integration with GitHub.
Yes, it was pretty sweet.
To find it here.
I can look as well.
I don't know if it's not released yet or what, but if you have a link for that, that'd be something we could give a shout out to real quick before we leave.
Yeah, chat room if you have a link for code spaces. But essentially what it is like if you have a project up on GitHub, and if you want to just bring me in to look at something, I could hit a button on GitHub, and that's just going to spin up a VM. Yeah, it looks like you found something.
So I found it. It looks like it's you need to request early access to it. That's why I'm not seeing it on my GitHub.
Yeah, so essentially you spin up a VM and you spin up everything that particular project needs, and then you can do live share over Visual Studio, and you're kind of in. So yeah, that was a pretty cool demo that they did.
I've got the animation up here, and it looks like there's a button right in your. And I was looking for it in mine. I couldn't find it because you need to have this early access. But there's a button right next to clone that you click open, and it just magically appears in your browser with Visual Studio Code, and you're ready to get going. And the demo they did at Build, I can't remember who did it, but they were in their like garage or something using an old Linux laptop, and they're like, I can just pick up my project from here and make some changes. It's pretty cool stuff. This type of stuff is really handy if this isn't maybe your primary project, but you're trying to help someone. And they're stuck on an issue, and they're like, can you just look at this file for me real quick? Yep. And you can go in there and help them and submit a pull request, like without having to, install SDKs and drop a million trees of node modules on your disk and all that nightmarish stuff. You just go right in the browser and hack away for a few minutes and help somebody out. It's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
And there was also a mention that Blazor works with this as well. So that'll be nice.
Yeah. All right, so Dan Siegel, I'm going to start getting into trouble if I read your comments on stream, but he's saying just end WPF and just move everything to WinUI. I don't think that's happening. Yeah. I don't think that's happening. But I mean, I see what you're saying. Like the thing with Windows is we don't realize like how many versions there are. So even like Windows 10 has different versions, and the app UIs are not the same. They're just not the same APIs. So I think that's what WinUI is trying to solve. One other cool thing that I noticed, which I don't know, Ed, if you caught that, but I'm going to maybe post a link here if I can. This is right up in the alley of our good friends Brady Gaster at Microsoft, Seth Juarez. This is a little bit of like AI, a little bit of stuff that they're spinning up. I mean, what was startling for me, like what we saw yesterday, was just the power of Teams, because like Teams is everywhere. It's driving everything. There are Teams apps. It's like a whole ecosystem of Teams apps. The integrations are cool. For those of you who are streamers or podcasters, I don't think I have it yet, but Teams looks like they're pushing out an update where they're going to open up NDI, which is the tech to kind of separate out the audio and video out of a call. And that's something we do over Skype nowadays, but we should be able to do it over Teams as well going forward. And then Teams also have this thing about code conversations, which essentially looks like a bot that can actually run C#, and it can show you, it can spit out some output from running your C#, but it also has a little bit of smartness. So if you give it something where you're trying to draw a UI, it's actually going to draw a UI for you within Teams. So it's like you and me collaborating over some C# code in Teams.
So what happens if I paste an infinite loop in here?
I don't know.
I'm that guy. I'm going to do that to you, Sam. You know it. Yeah, this is interesting. I wonder if this is drawing, and I'm just speculating, like completely speculating. I wonder if this draws from Jupyter Notebooks inspiration at all. Yeah. Because this feels very Jupyter Notebooks like. You can write code and there's like an analyzer that looks at the page and it's like, oh, this is code. I can actually run this. And then it puts it in a frame beneath the code. And it just has a very similar feel. Matter of fact, let's see. You can see this example with an online notebook. Did my speculation pay off? Oh, Binder. No, this isn't the same thing. Unless Binder is a version of Jupyter Notebooks. Could be. I have no idea. I've never heard of Binder before. It seems to be a little on the slow side. We'll look at that later. But yeah, adaptive cards. So it's pulling out. It's integrating with the bot framework.
Yeah. Oh, Chad dropped in. The NDI support in Teams is coming in June, so that's good. Yeah, and Teams has been it's quickly evolved, and you can see the amount of effort and investments they're putting in behind it, especially in these times when everybody is at home. It's evolved to be quite a beast, and the ecosystem is just growing and growing. Yeah, Little 101 is asking which teams can be used with individuals' account instead of having to be a... Yeah, okay, so everything that we talked about today, and this is maybe coming from the bias that Ed and me have, like we are .NET devs and we look at things from our little viewpoint, but there's a whole like Microsoft 365 set of announcements that we did not cover, and that's where Teams belongs. And I don't know the exact details. I mean, for most of us, like as long as your company, as your enterprise is running or has a license to run Microsoft 365, you get like everything out of the box. Maybe there are like some services and subscriptions that are different, but I don't think you get like personally, if you're just using like a Microsoft account or like an Outlook account, I don't think you get Teams. That this is really part of Microsoft 365, and maybe you just get to pay for it individually. But yeah, for the most part, like for Teams, whatever I've seen, it is tied to a company-wide installation.
So Sam, I'm going to circle back for 1 second on that code conversations. That Binder thing finally pulled up. It is Jupyter Notebooks.
Okay.
So it looks like at the very least they're borrowing the syntax from Jupyter Notebooks. Like I said, it looked very Jupyter Notebooks inspired when I looked at it. It's funny.
Yeah.
That's actually the truth. So they've got an example of how those things will work that you can pull up in Jupyter Notebooks and look at it.
Yeah.
It's neat stuff.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, a little one-on-one. I think we all wish that teams could be individuals, but I think there's just like more to it than like just, because like who's going to host it if it's just tied to you, right? When we all use Teams, it is tied to a company. So I mean, I'm sure they can pull off like cloud hosting, but these are things that are beyond our pay scale. We don't know exactly how licensing works and why it is not meant for individuals. So yeah. So overall, I think those were kind of the big announcements coming out of Build yesterday, and I think we might see some more today. But for .NET developers, mostly it's .NET 5. It's looking ahead at .NET 6. It is Blazor WebAssembly. It is Maui to go cross-platform. WPF WinForms getting enough love and being able to come on up to speed on .NET Core and .NET 5. What else? We talked about Blazor, obviously, and with Maui, you get multiple ways of rendering. There's no I in Teams. Yes, you're right, the tiger. Like, oh my god. So yes. Anything else, Ed, that we're missing?
No, I think we covered day one.
Yeah.
From at least our expertise as much as possible. There was just so much content. I think I only saw a fraction of it. So this is day 2 now. It's time to either catch up on what you missed yesterday or, there's a full agenda of stuff again for me today. So I'm excited to see what else they've got to unveil this week.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a 48-hour long stream where most of the breakout sessions, they are having like 4 parallel sessions, so it's impossible to catch up on everything. So this is kind of like our weekend spent in just trying to catch up on all the announcements and all. I mean, everything is recorded, so I'm sure there'll be things we want to go back to and rewatch. But yeah, overall, I must say I'm impressed with how they pulled off the first virtual build, and I'm guessing the second one, like the next year, might also be the same, because like Microsoft canceled every in-person hosted events at least until like June of next year. So yeah, this was a nice, actually interactive experience, and they pulled off the best they could.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that has to happen this way, and next year looks like it's going to be the same. It's one of those things. It's a necessary evil at this point. I know I'd rather be in Seattle this morning instead of locked up indoors, but hey, you got to do what you got to do, and they made one heck of a production out of it. I mean, their production quality is phenomenal given the circumstances.
Yes, yeah. And hey, I mean, you don't get to complain about food at Build, which I know many of us have. The food
this year is much better. So for those who haven't been in person to Build, food is not one of the highlights. It is a joke that everybody is part of every year.
You have to stand in a line, and then at the end of it, what you get is maybe not edible at times, to put it lightly.
Yeah. Yep. Inedible food is definitely the way to sum it up. But fortunately, Seattle is full of great places to eat and lots of amazing coffee. And I have to bring in my coffee from Washington. I'm broken.
You're a connoisseur.
I've been spoiled. I've been there too many times. So every month I get a little shipment from the Pacific Northwest, and it goes in a freezer bag. What do you call it? Vacuum seal bag, and then in the freezer, so I can dole it out a little bit at a time. Keep it fresh.
Chad is calling us food snobs. So okay,
totally.
We'll take that. But here's the thing. I mean, like we have been to lots of regional conferences, like Codepalooza, like all of the conferences that are in the Heartland Regional, and the food is fantastic. I can't say that about Bill. Like there's something particularly bad. Maybe just could have been just a couple of bad years, but it was just really bad. Uh, Especially in like San Francisco where they had it a few years, it was really bad. Yeah.
Chad knows I used to help him with Codepalooza, and I was always pushing to make sure the food was good quality, which wasn't hard. The places that Chad chose for venues always had really good food. Better than anything we've ever had at Build, that's for sure, but that's a low bar. But there's been some really good ones. The Louisville Marriott had some amazing food when we were down there. So that's one of the things I'll miss about Codepalooza this year, it being virtual and not being able to take folks around town to some of the really good restaurants in Louisville.
Yeah, and the bourbon. I will say one thing. I'll add a little one-on-one. I hear what you're saying. Like you wish there was a Teams made for individuals, and the thing that I would point to is .NET Foundation, which is the global ecosystem that helps out open source projects. And there's a driving committee. There are regular meetings that you can attend. Folks in the .NET Foundation are actually really pushing for this to happen. So just keep an eye out there. Maybe drop in their chat rooms or whatever and just push for this. They are talking about opening up Teams for like user group leaders, because that's kind of what we are doing. A lot of us who do like user groups and meetups, we have taken it all online for the foreseeable future because we all want to be safe. And we are hosting it on Teams. And then we are also live streaming it. But unless you have a company that has a hosted Teams account, you don't get that luxury. So yes, I'm on board with you. I thought there was an individual family Teams plan coming with Microsoft 365. I don't know, Chad. Maybe it is. Yeah, maybe it is. So we'll just keep an eye out more on Microsoft 365. Look around and see what they can do for individuals, and keep pushing on .NET Foundation, I think. All right, Ed, we said an hour. I think we talked about most of the big .NET announcements. Yeah, a lot of things were unveiled yesterday, a lot of exciting stuff. And like you said, the production quality was phenomenal. So let's take the time to kind of soak this all in and rewatch what we want to. And I think there's plenty to get excited. This is a good time to be a .NET dev. Lots of flexibility, lots of stuff happening in the ecosystem.
Yep. And I think we should wrap it up because they're getting started again over at Channel 9.
Cool. So hey, folks, this is Code It Live. You're going to get chickens, and you're going to get Ed and me and everybody else on the stream. We do try going almost every day of the week. So come and join us whenever your time permits. And yeah, Ed and me, thank you for spending an hour with me. We just tried to break down what all of this means to us, and hopefully that resonated with what most .NET devs should be concerned about.
Yep. Same here. We've got a session to watch at Build today. Ask the .NET Core team. So that's where I'll be in an hour. Is watching that. It's looks like it's Teams chat. So that should be some interesting conversations.
Yeah, Dan.
And we'll recap again.
Yeah.
Tomorrow.
No, Dan. I see your thing about Microsoft Developer Rating. I may need to get it set up, but I'll try. Yeah, thanks for all you do. Thank you, Tiger, for joining in. We love you all, and yeah, we might come back and do a little bit more of a deep dive recap sometime this week or next. But yeah, thank you so much, and we appreciate your time, and we shall see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Cool.